Wow. It's never a dull moment here with we are so glad to have you on this terrible day and appreciate your coming. But it's always available on Zoom in case you need to miss or yeah. Not that I would condemn those who choose other paths, but just I appreciate you coming. Um, the sons of Henry II, we're going to talk about, and as I was walking over here, I started thinking about the daughters. And you think, why don't we talk about them? Well, there's a very good reason because none of them are going to get to stay in England. They're going for trips and not coming home. No Thanksgivings at home. And you understand, of course, about the marriage proposition. Not that they are not going to be very involved, because many are. And I will show you examples of that as we go through. But with every marriage comes the dowry and all the connections that marriages of monarchs bring. And I just thought I would start that as we go through the sons, because the very first, and you can see he has quite a nice tomb and around the young Henry, as he was called. Actually, from my fading eyesight, I cannot read it. I wish I could. But he was the eldest. He was known as the young Henry. And you think, oh, tragic. Not so much for his parents. Apparently, he was not so popular, because sometimes young people will say, gosh, Dad, you're not looking well. And we understand, of course, the EKG or other medical tests, and they're hoping for a negative. Seriously, he had already been crowned. And you think, well, that's nice. It's like sort of junior and all of that. It's called, to use the fancy term, co-optation. Ask how many people know that. But basically, it means you are the heir, and he was crowned. And so you can strut around and say, someday when Dad's gone, we'll all be real sad, but we'll get over it. And I'll be king. That's what he thought, but he didn't. And by the time of young Henry's death, he was definitely not going to be missed as far as his parents were concerned. The second, and oddly, he didn't become king either. He died. Geoffrey, who married the heiress to Brittany. And that's not so bad. Brittany, quite nice. If you want to do that, I guess had he lived, he would have been king. But you can bet that Geoffrey's widow, when he died, and you don't have to know this, 1186, but you may want to know it, in case, just for whatever reason. But he left a son, and you can believe that Mama's going to trace his claims to the throne. The little boy, who was nicely, very romantically named Arthur, as in king. Yeah. So I'm sure he didn't look like that, but that was Geoffrey of Brittany. And again, you like to say, oh, I bet his parents' heart was broken. I don't think so. Again, I think he was as we used to say, sorry, as his older brother. Yeah, folks, he wished his parents, I'm not thinking he would send them a Hallmark card, Parents' Day or anything. I mean, it's like he was saying, gosh, we're going to really be sorry about when the brother died, and now you're not looking well. And, it's just the way he was. So that's number one. Number two, and they're both gone. So it's a very, very odd situation because we know Anthony Hopkins. I mean, I know. Sorry, Visions of 1968. But yes, he played the role. And I remember my first reactions. I thought he was nice and he was out conquering and loving. But if you saw the movie, doesn't seem like he was so nice after all. At least if you want to consider that particular role as a true portrayal. He is son number 3, mama's boy, no heirs, and of course, for most of us, known for his crusading. Richard the Lionhearted. We'll talk a little bit about that, but before I go on, we always want to say 6 months only in England during the entire reign. I know you would think, as much as we all are suffering from Anglophilia, you'd want to be there all the time, but he had a lot going on, let us say, in terms of his reign, and he just did not have the time. And he had his mother, and believe you me, she was very active. Remember, and for those who saw The Lion in Winter, she actually had been, I hate to say incarcerated, but let's just say in confinement during the reign of Henry II because she had a bad habit of stirring up their sons against him. Yeah, Mama was the kind of ringleader. Once he was dead, then of course she was free to roam. And in the reign of Richard, she was more or less a regent on his behalf during all those years. Now, why was he in England? Well, we were just talking earlier about advancement, fundraising, and we know how important it is. And of course, how many wonderful causes are there? Well, apparently, Richard thought the cause of crusading was very good. I mean, they've already had 2, and darn it, we lost Jerusalem. And so we need to get it back. So that was the cause, but fundraising is not cheap. I mean, crusading is not cheap, and so we need to do a lot of fundraising. Encourage people to give, encourage monasteries, other religious institutions, cough up, I guess, in the vulgar language, but put up the money, and all kinds of people. That was why he was in England for those 6 months. It was all for filthy lucre, not for the rest of us who would go there for sightseeing and that kind of thing. He had no time. He was, of course, interested. Now, did he like to fight? Shoot, yeah. I mean, he was fighting, and not only in the Holy Land, he was fighting in his French territories. He just didn't have time to do England. The rubbings, you may know from tombs, you may have done it yourself. But more or less, he had good administrators, and of course, Mama. We never forget how important Eleanor of Aquitaine is, even though she had lots and lots of territories. She, in fact, had made him Duke of Aquitaine. So it is fair to say that during that decade, 1189 to 1199. And he did perish back in Normandy, so it's not as if he died while he was on crusade. He made the Crusades, had quite a, I'm sure, great time. You could see yes, I mean, the Third Crusade is, I don't know, met a lot of interesting people, great trip, if you're having a wonderful time, we should here. You remember the great Muslim leader Saladin, and they sent each other sort of like, it was a bromance. Isn't that what they say now? I think he and they admired each other, even though different faiths, I think I would say. But I love the way you fight and hurt and massacre. It's great. I really admire you. I give you 3 stars and all of that. I mean, it sounds ridiculous, but in fact, with all the killing and massacring, I have to bring a little humor to it, because in fact, they do seem to have admired each other, and sometimes the other Christian leaders, there was just some hard feelings. I mean, of course, the great emperor had an accident on the way, and I don't want to get into that. The great Frederick Barbarossa drowned on the way, which was unfortunate. I think you would agree. And as far as the French leader, you think, well, gosh, you're from France, got some Norman territories, Aquitaine. You want to talk about it? I think that was not an easy relationship. And, remember Philip in The Lion in Winter, because the future James Bond played that role, didn't he? Yeah. So it's a very interesting idea. But in fact, we know that the French leader eventually said, I'm not feeling well. I have a sick headache. I need to get back to Paris. So, yeah, I mean, and leaving Richard there to fight. And ultimately, Richard had to go home without taking Jerusalem. So, but it was exciting, as we know from the perspective of Crusaders. I mean, we didn't get the ultimate goal. The journey involved long stays in everybody's favorite, Sicily. And apparently he had a unfruitful marriage to the heiress there, but there were no children. So all in all, it was a very interesting part of his life. In fact, most of his adult life, if you want to get down to it. And he died in 1199 without great successes. I mean, he kept his territories. And of course, the French king fought him. And that was, of course, the famous Philip II, that again figures in the movie. I think it was Timothy Dalton, wasn't it, who played that role? I think it was first film. Not that I'm any historical expert. I know. I like to think those were chuckles of admiration and joy when you see this. And remember, Daddy loved him very much. I think, I'm sure that's not true for you, but in some families, the parent has a favorite child. I'm sure they're all favorites to you. But in this case, apparently, which is very odd to think, Henry favored the baby, and this is the baby as far as the males are concerned. Again, I'm not meaning at all to deprecate the various daughters, but they are off as wives of various rulers, Germany, whatever. Just thinking about a particularly interesting Spanish one who was granddaughter of Eleanor, Blanche of Castile, as she is known. Now, I've tried to get the nicest portrayal of him. It's not because he's just John. So if you would have that on a quiz, you say, gosh, I wonder what number he is. Well, see, that's good for you. You don't have to learn a number because they never used it again. Isn't that wild? I'm thinking about Charles because were you surprised when Charles became king that he became number 3 and after the first and second weren't so successful, shall we say? One had his head chopped off, and the other was number 2 in the number of illegits. London Fire.
London Fire is good.
Yeah, plagues. I mean, all kinds of bad things. So here is John. Do you want to call him sneaky, underhanded, not a very nice person? Psychotic? I mean, various theories. Can you imagine if Dr. Freud and he could get together? And how did you feel about your mother? Yeah, Eleanor, and she loved. Oh, but she loved Dickie. She didn't appreciate me. Yeah, you got it. Yeah. I don't know, but he was definitely not very. And I guess maybe being the last one, you feel like I'm not going to get anything, and everybody else is special. But we do want to say something nice about administration. We love administration. You say, well, I don't. I want somebody brave. Well, then you got Richard. Yeah. But if you want somebody who is very important in the development of the exchequer and all these various branches of government, because like many rulers, he loved the filth of lucre a lot. And he was willing to get it in any way that he possibly could. But that is an interesting portrayal of King John. And he becomes king because he takes it. You say, but he has little Arthur. Remember little Artie? Living in Brittany there with Mama. And do you think Mama said anything when John said, I'm the king now, get down? I don't think. You think, is this legal? Well, they accepted it. And believe you me, Constance, that is the mother of Arthur, she's not going to take it lying down. And that's why we have Mother's Day, because she's going to say, I know what my son's rights, you brother-in-law, you. So we're going to have it out. Oh my goodness. How do we like romance? Yes. Is this romantic? Oh, mommy, can I be king? Yeah, baby. Yeah. See, it's Mama and son. Yes, they're in Brittany. And they're going to say, little Arthur and Mama, they're going to say to the King of France, you know what our brother-in-law is. That is Constance. Starts with a U and ends with an R. You don't mean, yes, I do, usurper. He took that throne and it belongs to my boy. and I demand justice. Doesn't that sound like something out of some sort of criminal file? But yeah, I mean, she really played it up. And they had some serious fights when the forces of Constance fighting for Arthur's rights. And Uncle Johnny had other plans. Yeah. So something happened. Because you're thinking, whatever happened to Arthur? See, look at, didn't he have his outfit? I wonder, little child shop when they pick up things for rich people. But think, oh no, you don't mean, yes, I do. Nephew side, yes. It's sort of like whatever happened. Well, he went to visit his uncle and he never came back. But you're always thinking about, is there any proof? Well, no, but everybody just takes the obvious thing. I mean, you say, oh, well, maybe he got a little sick. He was a sickly child. And we did the best, and, his aunt and uncle tried to look after him, but he didn't make it. It's a very strange thing. And believe you me, there were people who, as you can imagine, thought the worst about King John. And I don't want to prejudice you. I just want you to be aware that there seems some evidence that Arthur met an unfortunate end, an unnatural end, and his own uncle had something to do with it. Look who actually brought this up. Now, I don't know if this has ever been done, Montgomery at our Shakespeare Festival, because this is not one of Shakespeare's greatest hits. You know what I mean? You can get it. Oh, I'm sure on Amazon or somewhere, but that's what it's called, The Life and Death of King John. And see the little fellow. I love you, Uncle Johnny, but I don't love you. You're going down. Yeah, I know. No Hallmark card for you. You are a loser. But the play is not well known, but it definitely had. I mean, how could Shakespeare in the 16th century, how could he have not fallen in love with the tale? Because it was repeated, gosh, for centuries, that John had been responsible for Arthur's death. So whatever the truth is, we don't know, but we do know that the various sources were agreeing with Shakespeare here. So it's not just a story, although it can't be proven for obvious reasons. I guess, all this crime shows now, and we think of DNA and all of that, but we don't have that kind of evidence for back in that day. But it is very interesting to think that this is what happened to the little fella. Meanwhile, the relationship between John and the French king, I mean, they probably had a relationship of sorts. I mean, they got to be cousins, they have connections, shall we say. But the ultimate goal of every French king was to take this territory. It's not like they ever thought, well, I'd rather live with you in peace and let's just try to get along. No, it was never like that. Oh, at times they would accept each other and say, we can work together, whatever the case. But the goal and the importance of that goal, which is to take all the territory of the Plantagenets in France, was, I think we could agree, I guess pretty natural, not just for the French, as we might. I mean, I don't want to be too nationalistic about this because these monarchs, they were related in a sense. Remember, if any of this rings a bell from the movie or otherwise, you might remember Eleanor of Aquitaine was married at one time to Philip II's father. So we've all had reunions and get-togethers. It's not as if like, well, gosh, I didn't really get to know you. They knew each other all too well. If we want to know about any kind of personal connections, we know that is obvious. But the fact is, the acquisition of land and the holding of another king who has these lands because Philip II wants them. I don't know whether he was concerned about his father. Remember Louis VII, and it was pretty hard, to lose. Well, I don't think he was necessarily loving Eleanor Aquitaine so much as the humiliation of losing Aquitaine, but because he was married a number of times afterwards, so he got over it or dealt with the pain. For those who want to put this into a Harlequin context, I think he did well with it. And he was anxious to become what he did, and that is known in the textbooks as Philip Augustus. Oh, Augustus. Oh, yes. Remember him? Roman emperor? Yeah. And what do we think of when we think of Augustus? Of course, we think of August, the month, 8th month. And we think of power, grandiosity, and grandeur, I should say, being powerful. And that's what he wanted, and what he did. And that's very, very important. Oh, I bet you thought we'd never get a map. Yes. I know. Well, it's coming. You Capetians and Plantagenets. Oh, Arbor Day is here for you. I want you to see these territories because, again, those of us who love England, I love all Great Britain and the Republic of Ireland, so I don't want to be biased. But look at all that yellow and think about those were the days we had all that French territory, good times. But anyway, I don't want to say anything bad. I just want you to be aware. As if you didn't know of all these territories. There's Brittany. And if you remember, and of course you do, little Arthur. Yes, Arthur Brittany. And there is Normandy, and we love Normandy, of course. And then, of course, we go south, and you think, gosh, there is so much. Yes, there is. And Philip Augustus, wants to change all that. His relationship with John, well, they had plotted together against Richard, but I don't guess that's terribly surprising. And Philip had encouraged other vassals of King Richard to plot against him. And remember, it had been Philip who had accompanied Richard on the crusade. They had a stopover in Sicily and said, oh, this is so great. And it was Philip who left Richard in the Holy Land. Oh, gosh. Let me know how things are going. I hope it's like, really? Right there in the Middle East? Yeah. it's gonna be not a good situation at all. Now, let's think about John's issues. Now, again, I ask you to remember the map, because all of this may have had something to do with marriage and children. John's first marriage, which was to an English noblewoman, led to no issue, and apparently he had no interest in her. So basically, she's, I guess, you get a settlement or something, it's like a monthly check or whatever it is. But basically, she's out of the picture. I had to look her up. It's one of those things, if some quiz show and they'd ask me that, I wouldn't know. It's very embarrassing. But I do know about the second, because she's the one who's important. Actually, they're both named Isabella. I guess it's one of those names that was real big in that day, like lots of Matilda. Yeah. We're going to talk about John had a sister named Matilda. But enough of family genealogy. On we go. Let's just remember Isabella. Isabella of Angoulême. And again, I won't bother going back to the map. But Angoulême is sort of center south. And John had decided to go, yes, Rod, to everybody's favorite Spain, to possibly negotiate with the Aragonese about, or Castilians about, a marriage in their family. Because you say, boy, that John was a primo. I'm sure all these women were after him. I don't know about that, but it would be interesting for the families, shall we say. Not that the families are so concerned about the daughter as they're concerned about how it's going to affect them in terms of their prospects and all the rest of it. In this case, the parents of Isabella, when the Angoulême folks, they were, of course, vassals of John. I almost said King John, but it's not king, is it? It's Duke. And you say, why Duke? I want him to be a king. I'm sorry. We're in France now. He can't be king. So you say, well, does that affect these nobles in Angoulême? No. It's going to be wonderful. Our daughter will be living in England, queen over there, and things are great. I mean, all kinds of family can get appointed. You said the filth of nepotism? Yes, it's on the way. They already have dreams of that. There's just one teeny problem. Isabella was already engaged. Oh, darn it. Now, before you get too romantic about this, I want you to get over that. If it requires therapy, we can cover that, because it took me a long time to deal with it, but it had nothing to do with it, a broken heart. Then I think you've been reading too many 12th century romances, the whole thing of the love, the courtly lover and all that. This was all about power and money and all the rest. She was engaged to a man, well, not just any man, Hugh Lusignan. And Lusignan was a major area in South Central France. And why John wanted to marry Isabella, and again, I will admit it, until I was probably 30, I used to believe that he stole her away, John did, and all that. I think it now in my more, I like to call it my realistic stage. I think it all had to do with the fact that the area, Angoulême and Lucien, they were very close to each other. So with John marrying Isabel, with the encouragement of her parents, he was creating a situation in which Hugh's ability to challenge him in any way was checked. So when you think about Hugh and what's Hugh gonna say? Oh, my heart is broken. I'll never get over Isabella. I think we have to deal with feelings. There are feelings. I mean, if you had a therapist and say, could you explore your feelings? No, I think the feelings were resentment and a power grab, because I'm thinking Hugh was a grown-up and Isabella was a child. So it's not like central casting. So we can spare ourselves from that. This is not going to be picked up in any way by some romance. Hugh, was marrying Isabella for the obvious reasons of utilizing that connection to get territory. But what do? Yeah. We get even. Because remember, John has a Lord. And that Lord is going to say, you were really, really ugly to your vassal. And when people are ugly to their vassals, sometimes they have to be disciplined. Yeah. I mean, if you think about that, that was the way it was supposed to work all along. I mean, in theory, it did, but now that is what Philip intends. And you think Philip wasn't just thrilled because this is legal. This is legal. You know what you did? You dishonored your vassal. Well, aren't you ashamed? I mean, and you call him into the office and you say, now you were bad. And so theoretically, do we think John will come to Paris and say, gosh, sir, I really feel bad about this. Breastfeeding. I'm sorrowful. I really violated the rights of my vassal. No. He loved Isabella. He loved her so much. And I know off comes the ring because she had her engagement ring and all the excitement of nuptial bliss. I don't think so. I think it all has to do with the honor. I've been dishonored. That's what this is all about. Gosh, I feel bad about it. Because, I mean, don't you think wounded feelings and we look across feelings, nothing more than feelings. Some of you remember the song. But yeah, I know, I won't sing. Don't worry. I'm under control here. But we understand, of course, the idea of the overlord and what is John going to do now? Is John going to come and say, oh, well, Isabella was just a passing fancy, and I realize how hurt you are, Hugh. And no, instead, you're going to get a situation in which I think we would say now, in thinking about the situation, John made a very, very bad decision. Basically, Philip's call to John was perfectly legitimate in the sense of when you're the overlord, and those of you about how the feudal rights occur. You have a lord, and the lord has certain rights over you. And if you are bad, I mean, we love each other in a way because this is all about fraternity. But there are rules. I'm the Lord, and you're not. And you have vassals, I have vassals. That's the way it's supposed to work. And John does a no-no. And what is the no-no? He ignores his Lord. Or he may have just sent him an ugly note or something. But basically, when you do that, there are consequences. And what are the consequences? Well, as we all know, Philip isn't coming to the wedding. Okay. Yeah. All the folks in Paris are not coming. So that hurts. But what else is going to happen? Well, confiscation. You mean, yes, I do. All those beautiful lands, and it's so beautiful, as we all know, especially Normandy. Wouldn't you like it? I mean, would you like to have it? I mean, I'd love to have just Lee County. I mean, I'm fine. I'm fine with Lee County, but some of you would be happier taking possession of Normandy. I don't want to increase your lust here, but I'm just saying that it's amazing to think immediately there is this royal decree that would come out. Now, I'm going to mention to you, because this was an area of concern for me in my research. We don't have formal courts yet in the sense of the royal court, the Parlement de Paris, and all of that. Yeah, we're just starting, but it's just the idea that you're my vassals and you obey. That's the theory. I'm your lord. And when you do something naughty, you can say you're sorry. And I'll give you a big hug. And you'll promise not to do it. That kind of thing. But what do you do if you ignore me? Well, my feelings are hurt. A. And B, gosh, I think we're going to have a war. Well, let's face it. What do these folks normally do? I mean, what's the point of the whole feudal business if we're not ready for it? So Philip was definitely ready. So amazingly, to me, the fighting will begin when Philip is going to say, you know what? You've lost the right to all these territories because you know what you are? Now, here's one of my favorite words. You're a perfidious vassal. Oh, no. Yeah. Nobody in Ollieam should be called perfidious, but it's one of my favorites, because if you're perfidious, that means you have not followed the right laws. You're bad. And you won't say you're sorry either. That's double bad. Yeah. So, and yes, you will go to hell, but in addition, you're going to lose these territories. You could say, oh, can't we work it out? Can't we be friends? No. No. You've been ugly to us, and now we're going to be ugly to you. The French take all these territories. One chronicler says in Paris, bells were ringing. Students from the Sorbonne were celebrating. I don't know if all that's true. It sounds like something kind of 1789, 1790, doesn't it? But it was very, very important for the growth of French territory. Because remember, as long as Normandy was under English control, if you had been a Norman at that time, would you have had in your heart some sort of love for the French? I don't know. I think that presupposes a lot that they were, oh, everybody in Normandy is so, we can't wait, Vive la France, all that. That sounds like something out of a World War II movie, but basically, whatever the interests of the people of Normandy, the Normans took much of that territory and indeed lots of other territory. And you say, was it embarrassing for the English king? Well, I think so. I think there's a good reason there's not been a John II, right? I mean, you've lost all that, and then people are saying, I'm going to use an ugly word now. Are you a loser? I know, that's a hurtful word, but yeah, I mean, I think he pretty much got that reputation. And it's been going on for a very long time. And it's not as if the English dealt with it or they had therapy and talked over their issues and thought, oh, well, maybe it's all better for the Norman people to be with the French. And I know they love each other very much. No, these English didn't do well with this. And on and on and on. How long? Well, this will, you do need to know this year. 1453. Yeah. Thank gosh, that's a long time. Yeah, I mean, sometimes loss can be that way. Whenever we can raise enough money, let's go fight them. We're going to get Normandy back. But they didn't, and for that reason, we're glad, but it seemed like a major issue at the time. Let's put it that way. The example, now this gets a little complicated, has to do with what's called the Battle of Bouvines. And I even have a map. It's so close to the border. And you all know that Belgium didn't exist until the 19th century. So you're right there between quote unquote France. And I say quote unquote because these territories, see Paris and look all the way up there where this land is. And this, of course, is Flanders. And I know many of you have been there and know of the Flemish and then those of the French extraction. But like the Swiss, they're very proudly Belgian. And that's now. But back then, it's way up here, what we call Bouvines. You can go there, take the tour. Oh, yeah, all the amenities of the tourist trade, because this was the great battle. And this was a battle in which King John, note the date, 1214, that he will attempt to regain the lands he's lost, because he didn't do well with it. He didn't accept it and say, I know we've had some bad times in the past, but hey, let's just shake hands. I'll tend to things in Aquitaine and England, and you just enjoy Normandy, and we can see you at the next family get-together. But it's not going to be that way, is it? Bouvines is going to be one of these great events. And again, notice all this territory, and you can imagine as the French are taking all these territories, and it's never a time that the English, or what we say, John and his forces, are ever going to say, we want to deal with this and move on. Remember, because this has been about a decade, but that's nothing in terms of the enormous cost. And now we have to introduce someone new. His name is Otto. You think, gosh, that sounds so German. Yes. But guess what? His mother is English. Yeah. You say, well, I wonder what her name is. Oh, listen, if you had this fill in the blank and you didn't study, or maybe you cut class, I don't know. You and you were just having to guess. And you said Matilda, you get full credit. Another Matilda, and you say, gee, I wonder where they got that name. God, think back to all the Matildas. And her mother was Eleanor. And now she was the mother of an emperor. Well, sort of. He had been, in fact, the son of the Duke of Saxony. We don't have to worry about a lot of that, but I want you to be aware that Otto and his nephew, Otto and his uncle, I should say, Uncle John. I mean, I don't know if you want to claim him, but that's how that worked. And I love this picture of chess player because that is so hard to believe, but that's so medieval. Passing time. Otto of Saxony is what we would call a player in the politics of the Holy Roman Emperor. Now, to many of you, if I say Hohenstaufen, I know you immediately think of German emperors. I'm with you. I know. You say, oh, you mean Barbarossa? You're mighty right. Yeah, Frederick Barbarossa. And you remember he passed away on the way to the Third Crusade. You don't have to know that, but I'm just saying. That's just an interesting little aspect. Meanwhile, the Hohenstaufens, after him, had a hard time maintaining their authority. Otto and his family tried to get that throne, the imperial throne. And the Pope is involved in it. And I'm trying to keep as many names out of it as possible, but there is I know, it's kind of hard. Frederick's grandson will become the main. You say, what about people going to hell? Well, you got one. He's right here, Frederick II. He's in hell. You just check Dante if you don't believe me. But he was cute when he was a baby. Okay. So I just want you to know he went through his cute period. And he read a lot of books, polyglot, knew a lot of languages, philosophy major. Yeah. But he's in hell. So meanwhile, keep this as non-confusing as I possibly can. The Hohenstaufens opposed Otto and his family for the position of emperor. You say, well, how could they claim it? Well, it's kind of an elective position. You get elected, and then some people say, well, we don't agree with that decision. Well, you want to fight about it? Yeah, why not? I mean, that's what we do. We fight. I mean, it's not like everybody have a kiss. And it's like fighting. And interestingly, the Pope will be involved. Why will the Pope be involved? Because, as we like to say in the South, the Hohenstaufens got too big for their britches. Yeah. So Otto IV was quite the player. Otto IV and his family, and they're the Saxon Dukes, they will claim, Your Holiness, we love you. Please hold out your foot so we can kiss it. I mean, it's that kind of thing. And The Pope will go for it. Thank you so much. You are truly a son of Peter, meaning me. I have a ring, kiss it. And Otto plays the game very well. So the Pope will recognize him as Holy Roman Emperor. What does that mean about the Hohenstaufens? Oh, you mean the people who are damned? Yeah. So it's ugly and it's a big fight. And at some point, Otto, despite all of his promises, I love you, Holy Father. What do I want to do? Obey you. Well, if you want to obey me, then why are you in papal lands? Yeah, that hurts. These are lands that I guess they were ruled by the Pope until the 1920s, or at least 1870. Can you believe it? But it really, really is a hard thing to keep these folks out. And Otto IV had promised, he said, if you recognize me as emperor, sir, I'm going to protect you against those damnable Hohenstaufens. And you know what I want to do? I want to just love you and love St. Peter. You know, he knew all the right things to say. Yeah. And it went over real well, but ultimately he proved to be mendacious. I know, he told lies. So he ended up losing any claims. And he turned to his uncle. He said, sir, I love you very much. And could we get really closer? Your uncle, I'm your nephew. Don't you have enemies? Yes, I do. We. I don't like that Philip, King of France. He's mean. Yeah, well, I have enemies too, so maybe we could join forces. That's how this relationship starts. The relationship between John and Otto. I mean, they've got blood, but basically Otto wants to get back as emperor, and his uncle wants, as who doesn't, Normandy. Because it's not like we go down and accept it. So that will be the Battle of Bouvines, when the forces, mostly of John, but in part of Otto, and they will, I guess you could say, have joint command, but I think it's John's more or less. But Otto has hopes that he will recover the authority of emperor. You know, so you can imagine they got a lot riding at that Battle of Bouvines in 1214. Well, it didn't happen. In 1214, they will both be, dare I say it, losers. Philip is the winner, and the winner in France, and the Hohenstaufens, in the form of the man who's going to hell, Philip II, will prevail. Maybe Otto IV is in hell too. I don't know. I'm just saying we've got proof that Frederick II is there, thanks to Dante. In any event, if you were to go home now in the fall of 1214 and said, you know, we've had some good times. I love all of you very much. You remember Normandy? We loved that territory. It was great.
Nice cheese.
But it's all memories. Now, you have a choice. You could maybe go south, live in Aquitaine, go, oh, Aquitaine. Or you can come live with me in England. Said, we don't think so. So this is a problem. Because remember, since 1066, there have been families who had land in both places. And so I know we're Anglophilic, most of us. And we would say, well, shoot, if I had to give up that Normandy. I mean, I know how we feel about Normandy. But you think, gosh, as long as I could have my tea and scones, all the great things that England has to provide, I take that in a heartbeat. Well, I'm not sure that everybody would agree with you in terms of land, because many of them are already saying, gosh, I guess if we're going to have a new Lord, we better start loving some Capetians. Yeah. And working on our French lessons, because then we got a new crowd running things. So, I mean, it's going to be very, very tough. Some who choose to remain loyal to John are going to say, in effect, probably we need to make some changes because you've had a number of problems. You've been king since, well, longer than we care to remember, since 1199, and now this is getting towards 1215. And look, we've lost Normandy. And you think, maybe you can talk to a doctor about it and deal with the pain. No, I think it's more than that. It's much, much more than that. And there's something more. You have usurped our authority. You power abuser. Oh, John, we really don't like you. So what can you do? Well, until Isabella has a child by John, he's the ruler. And there will be a child, by the way. So don't worry about that. He's coming to a class near you, but believe me, another Henry. But at this point, John is going to have to deal with, shall we call it, the outrage, the resentments, because we're all supposed to be a big family, the brothers getting together, and you're all my vassals and I love you very much, that kind of thing. The way, it is in the storybooks, but there's a lot of hurt feelings. I think the loss of Normandy is more serious than we can really imagine. But we understand, of course, that all of this is accompanied by an enemy that most of us don't want to have, that church. And why is that a problem? Because they are of the same view. John is just not a good person. The Archbishop of Canterbury will go down. I thought about how I could describe Hubert Walter. No saint he, but have you ever heard of people like maybe what do they call Maurice Stanions? The Hall of Fame, the Administrator Hall of Fame. No saint, but he was a great administrator. As Archbishop of Canterbury, I don't mean he had to keep records. He's Archbishop of Canterbury. We had lots of little monk types to do all the work, but he's in charge of all of it, and it's a big operation. Many of you have been to Canterbury, and this was quite a nice. And he had lots of other things. Do I want to say he was something of a nepotist? Yes. But I think he did well with it. I don't think it kept him up at night. I think Simoniac, maybe. But he enjoyed lots of authority. He was one of the great assistants for Richard. because Richard was away, as you noticed, except for those 6 months. And you drop that in a party and see how many people know about those 6 months that Richard was there. And I think probably, what do they call them now? Advancement experts. I think he was definitely an advancement. So he would work with the Department of Advancement for the royal government when Richard was there. And basically, he helped Eleanor run things when Richard was away. So he's quite an operator. I'll give him all that. But he's not like going out, oh, I want to go run a fund drive for poor people. So, he's not into that. That's another department, and somebody else can do that. But he's a big deal, and he lives a long time. So we can understand that with his passing, people are already thinking about the future. We mourn you, old Holy One, all that. Yeah, I know, tears, but Puff's time is over. And then we're thinking, how can we work this to our own advantage? Yes. Even when you see all these folks out there, at Canterbury, just crying and saying, oh, Hubert, we miss you so. But already people are thinking, yeah, let's see what we can get. The Canterbury monks, thanks to Henry VIII, of course, that is no longer. But, yes, but at this time, the monks of Canterbury had the responsibility of electing new archbishops. They're not supposed to do that, of course, without royal permission and all of that. But apparently a group of them got together. And this is before Bouvin. This is about midway in the reign of King John. And they got together, and without telling him, they chose one of themselves. He was the prior, of course, being number 2. So they chose him, and they said, we're real proud of you. And how you cheer on the local. They said, we just want you to go to Rome and let the folk know and tell them we love them and send him all our best. But unbeknownst to the king, who had appointed one of his own, a bishop. Now, I'm going to use an ugly word, but you know it well. A sycophant, yeah, who's already a bishop. And what kind of bishop was? Let's just say that he knew how to play up King John. There's nothing wrong with loving your king. Maybe he loved him too much. Whatever the case, he was now appointed as archbishop. And King John said, now you need to go to Rome and tell the Pope I send my love. And I just want everything to work out. Have a nice trip. And you can kiss my cheeks when you get back to show everybody how tight we are. Well, you know what happens? Gee, it's like, to tell the truth, isn't it? I mean, will the real Archbishop of Canterbury please stand up? I mean, yeah, because this is not going to go over well in Rome, I can promise you. They both had set up shop in Rome. Gosh, it's not something out of political science. Lobbyists, trying to work yeah. You say, gosh, what's the Pope to do? He's in a quandary. Because, Archbishop of Canterbury, that's a nice job. Pretty heavy revenues. You have all kinds of opportunities, especially if you get along with a king. Thank Beckett, if you will. Yeah, seems like only yesterday. And then there's the Pope. The Pope's not going to say, I love you both very much. I just want to hug you, and maybe you can be Archbishop and you can be Assistant Archbishop. And we just love each other. It's all about love. No. It's about obedience. You know what I decided? Says Pope Innocent. Remember, he became Pope when he was just 37. So he must have commanded a lot of, per se, stature. He will say to both of them, you know what your appointments are? Null and void. Yeah. That can hurt. And you say, how can you do that? Well, he says, you both come to me and I quash you both. I like all these words. A quash, yeah. We're quashing those elections. And guess what? I have the perfect new Archbishop. He's one of my cardinals. CV like you just can't imagine. Can you imagine if you'd been a representative of the English king and like, it's not going to say, oh, thank you. This is so helpful. We really appreciate this. I think King John was plenty irritated, cross, vexed. I could use many other words. Indignant. Yes. But you get the point. The name was Stephen Langton. Stephen Langton was a brilliant canonist. I believe he and Innocent had known each other as students of canon law in Paris. I think many of us go to Paris for legal studies, but that was quite famous. I mean, Innocent was an Italian, but they were both scholars there. I'm not saying they were chums. I'm just saying they had this relationship. And Langton had worked his way up. He had become a cardinal, but he was English. I mean, there is evidence that he had that English connection. So now, I'm not saying they were necessarily close, but I guess what Innocent was trying to nullify both decisions because he found them to be flawed. And now he has what he thinks, and he is the Pope. He has the perfect individual to be the new Archbishop. So, with the other two lacking papal approval, they leave. They go back to their lives in Canterbury, where it may be. And Langton proceeds with his entourage from Italy, thinking about going back home and seeing all the folks, because I've enjoyed Rome, but just to think about being in Canterbury and Mama and Daddy and all the family can come hang out with me in Canterbury. But he gets a little note, and the note from King John says, "Dear loser, if you set 1 foot, you are going to be gurgling." Have you ever heard of the channel? Yes, you'll be in it, and I hope you had advanced swimming, because I would advise you to stay wherever you are and do not set foot in those. That's the truth. It was kind of ugly, if you want to know. I mean, it was not like, gee, I think we have a misunderstanding. Maybe we go to international working together. But Innocent had made his decision. And Innocent's not going to say, gee, well, if you feel that strongly, maybe, give peace a chance. Innocent said, I'm vicar of Christ, and you're not. And John, oh, and he always calls him my beloved son. Yeah, but son, meaning inferior. And so you will accept Langton. But you know what? You can go to hell. Very, very serious. You say, I bet that John is going to stand up and fight because we need to win something. Because we don't want to be a loser. Yeah, we already see that. Well, let me just pick it up there next time. Leave you on hanging needles to think about. Will John prevail over the Pope? Let's just see what'll happen. Thank you all. See you next time.